Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us at PMM Fest. Before this session starts, I just wanted to say a big thank you to all our sponsors, our partners, you, our festival attendees, and all our speakers too, because without all of you guys, none of this could have gone ahead and be the success that it has been. If you've not already checked it out, do check out our AMA site. Lots of our speakers will be heading over there after their sessions to take your questions and give their answers. So yeah, head over to the AMA site. That's all from me today. Enjoy the session.
Hi everyone, and welcome to our session presented by Closed for 8 tips for effective win-loss analysis. We appreciate you all joining today and are excited to share some of our thoughts. So welcome. Before we start, go ahead and fill out this survey. We like to, every time we engage with folks in this space, we like to get a little feedback from you about how win-loss is going in your organization. So if you fill that out, it'll help us kind of benchmark how companies are doing or how they feel they're doing on win-loss. And then we're going to randomly select 5 respondents and send out a closed swag bag to you. So before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about Closed, who we are, what we do. So we're a leading provider of win-loss services and technology. We work with B2B providers around the world, across industries. We're based in Utah. We have a really talented team of consultants that conduct win-loss interviews. We also have technology offerings to help you collect and aggregate feedback from your sales team and through our interview or buyer processes. So we've been around for several years now and view this as a space that's underserved with huge opportunities. So we're always happy to act as a resource to any of you at any point to pick our brains and learn more about how you can be more effective in this space. I'm Spencer Dent. I'm one of the co-founders of Closed. We've been here for several years, as I mentioned. Prior to this, I ran demand generation and marketing operations for a software company called Qualtrics. And while at Qualtrics, I also was the first full-time hire onto their sales strategy and operations team. So I helped them build out a team there. And in the time I was there, we grew pretty significantly. Prior to Qualtrics, I worked for Bain & Company in their go-to-market and commercial excellence practice, where I worked with major companies around the world on how to structure and go to market with their sales, product, and marketing teams. So this topic of win-loss is near and dear to my heart because I've spent the last decade working with folks and in this space dealing with the challenges that teams deal with when it comes to how do they win more. So let's just start with a baseline. What is win-loss analysis? This is one of those terms that is everybody almost applies a different definition. So let's get everybody on the same page. Win-loss analysis is the practice of systematically capturing and analyzing the reasons why you win and lose sales opportunities. If you do it right, it will help you confirm and prioritize both your strengths and weaknesses when it comes to your product and service offering. It will help you enable your sales team. It will help you improve your product strategy. It will help you market more effectively. It will help you increase sales productivity, decrease new rep ramp time. And ultimately, the most important thing is it can get everybody in your organization aligned and rowing in the same direction. Having a consistent and defined and strong viewpoint on why you win and lose can help your company go faster. You spend less time sitting around boardrooms and executive tables talking about what you think is happening and more time acting on what you know is happening. So as you go about tackling this, we've got 8 tips for you today as you think about win-loss. The first one is you need to make sure that you have executive sponsorship. You have to have the right people in the organization aligned and behind your effort. The reason that's important is this is cross-functional in nature. The best programs that we see have people from the sales team, leadership, from product, leadership from marketing, executive level sponsorship, and support. And that makes it so that everybody is bought in up front and will in a unified way act on the feedback on the back end. You'll go in sometimes to a win-loss program thinking that you have product challenges, and you'll come out and realize that there's issues with the way your sales team approaches customers. If you go blindly to the sales organization and tell them everything that's wrong with the way they approach customers, that feedback's not going to be very well received, even though it's legitimate, even though it's coming from the buyers. So get the right people on board up front. So get buy-in at the top, and then make it a top-down initiative. Make it a coordinated, cross-functional effort. It is so amazing to us at Closed how often we find out from our clients that there's somebody on a different team or department that has been doing something along the lines of win-loss, and how fragmented and redundant the effort is within organizations. So make sure that you get the right people involved up front, and then you'll be able to go much faster later. That's point number one. Point number two, choose the right win-loss data channels. Now, this is really, really important, and this is actually where you make the most strategic decisions about how to approach win-loss. It's right at the beginning and thinking about channels. Historically, companies do this in a very siloed way, to the point I made before. You have some people that are collecting win-loss information from sales, some people who are analyzing information that's in your CRM just around your account or opportunity information. And then you have maybe product people or product marketing people surveying buyers or interviewing buyers. So let's talk about all those different ways you can collect feedback. There's really 3 channels of information: the CRM, the sales team, your internal perspective, and the buyers. You need to recognize those are 3 different distinct channels of information that you can open up, and you need to leverage them appropriately. So I'll tell you a little bit about what that means. First, think about the CRM. The CRM data tells you what is happening. What is happening. So before I ever go solicit any feedback from a rep or reach out to a buyer, I can go look in my CRM and I can see what's happening with my win rate by region, by product line, by sales rep. Across any of the factors or fields that you have on your opportunity or account objects in your CRM, you can do this. Now, this is really important because it allows you, it's the first layer of win-loss, and it allows you to determine where and how to focus the second and third layers. So the second layer, your sales team. You can get feedback from your sales team that tells you why it's happening from an internal perspective. Now, that internal perspective is not perfect. And I'll tell you a little bit more about some of the challenges with that internal perspective here in a minute. But it is a very cost-effective way to skim the surface, go across as much, cover as much of your pipeline as possible, and get 1 to 2 layers deep of feedback from your sales team in a quick and efficient way. You do not want them filling out giant essays every time they close out an opportunity on why they won or lost. That is not an effective use of their time, and guess what? They won't do it. But you can effectively engage them, and there's ways to do that. And that will open up and help you figure out how to focus the third layer, which is buyer feedback, which also tells you why it's happening from the external perspective, and ultimately the most important perspective, because that's where the dollars exist, that's where the decision gets made, and that's where money gets spent. So you think of these as almost peeling an onion. Start with your CRM, then effectively engage your sales reps as they close out opportunities to get feedback from them, and then use that information to help you shape your approach to engaging buyers. That's the fourth point here. You need to use these channels in combination to drive your program. Doing an isolated interview program of buyers or an isolated survey of buyers with an isolated rep feedback workflow in your CRM and an isolated BI team that's analyzing your CRM win rates, there's going to be a lot of confusion in your organization around what's going on. So you want to try to unify that approach as much as possible. Now, one other really important thing here, as you think about opening these channels, The buyer feedback channel has two important components to it that are nuanced. One is you can engage buyers by surveying them. That can be a very effective way to cover a lot of pipeline. But know that B2B buyers will not fill out long surveys. So if you ask 25 questions to them, your response rate will be very low. If you ask more like 5 questions to them, you're more likely to get a higher response rate. The second way that you can engage those buyers is through an interview. Win-loss interviews are the richest, most valuable source of win-loss feedback. That's where you hear without any filter what actually happened according to the buyer. There's nothing more powerful for a company than to hear buyers on key deals tell you why they did or did not choose you. Now, that being said, they're also the most expensive channel to open up. So one of the reasons why you want to be very strategic about how you approach each of these channels is if you use your CRM data and you use sales feedback to directionally point you on how to deploy buyer research, then you'll be more effective on how you use any interviewing service, whether it's internal and you try to do it yourself or externally. You'll be better off if you are very directed and pointed in how you use win-loss interviews. 2 final points. I know I'm spending a lot of time on this slide. 1 point, leverage third parties for their technology and expertise. There are companies that exist that can help you figure out how to do this and do it effectively. They've seen it a lot. You'll spend far less time getting it set up and get much higher ROI much faster. The final point I will tell you is think about these channels in the context of your business. At Closed, we run programs for companies, and we have clients that have very complex pipelines where we are helping them open all 3 channels. We're helping them analyze their CRM data, gather feedback from their sales team, and both interview and survey their buyers. Those are very complex pipelines. They have products and services that target the SMB, the mid-market, and enterprise deals. The sales cycles can vary anywhere from 1 month to 1 year. So opening up the channels and strategically leveraging them makes a lot of sense in that situation. Now, we have other clients who their average deal size is $5 million. And in that case, even though it's the most costly channel to open up, buyer interviews absolutely make sense. You should be interviewing every single buyer on a deal that's worth $5 million. It's worth it for you to do that. So depending upon the nature and composition of your pipeline, how transactional the deals are, what the deal cycles look like, you should think about how you apply these different channels, particularly within the buyer channel, whether you do a survey or whether you do an interview. At the end of the day, this is the key. The odds are stacked against most organizations that are trying to internally conduct win-loss interviews. Several tendencies contribute to this problem: difficulty in achieving objectivity, inaccuracy of self-diagnosis, lack of continuity metrics, discretionary priorities. If the task is too daunting for an organization, then it must be outsourced. This is a quote from Pragmatic Institute. There's a lot of companies that opt to outsource the interviewing service. I would absolutely tell companies that they should do that. You'll get better, richer feedback, particularly on the interviewing portion of this. But remember, win-loss interviews are the richest source of data, but not the only source, and there's other ways to leverage the other sources. Once you choose the channels that you want to go after, you have to think about what questions you're going to ask. A lot of companies get off the rails very quickly here because they ask a lot of nice to know questions versus need to know questions. How you approach buyers and sales reps matters when it comes to the type of feedback you get. So once you choose the right channels, you have to think about how to engage those channels. Good question design will give you better output. It'll give you higher quality data. It'll lead to higher participation rates. So many companies start and stop on this over and over, especially when it comes to how you collect feedback from your reps. I know we're not together, but raise your hand if you've ever looked at the win-loss reasons in your CRM and laughed at how ridiculous the output is. Well, it's probably because the way you're asking the questions and the questions that you are asking are not actually starting with the end in mind about what you really need to know. So think really carefully about what you're going to ask, how you're going to ask it, when you're going to ask it. And that will lead to a better outcome overall, and you'll get more data. So a couple of rules here for you to think about. One, keep your question methodology simple. Companies overcomplicate this, and they go, as I mentioned, they go totally off the rails. They start doing conditional questioning where if they say this, then ask this. If they say it was product, then ask them these 4 questions. If they say it was sales, then ask them these 5 questions. What ends up happening in those cases, especially when it's quantitative research, like a survey, you end up with so many proliferations of the data set that you'll never be able to aggregate it and actually see what's happening. You'll have individual deal feedback, but it will be really hard for you to actually step back and say, why am I winning and losing at a macro level? So keep it simple and straightforward as much as possible. And that actually goes on the interviews too. You're not going to get great feedback if you overcomplicate the types of questions you ask, especially the high-level questions. The richest win-loss interviews occur when you go out and you ask the person, why did you do what you did? You chose us or you chose our competitor. Why did that make sense for your organization? And the next 30 seconds of them talking is gold. Which goes to the second point here. You want to focus on decision drivers. What were the things that drove their decision and influenced them one way or the other? And you actually want to do that regardless of the outcome. People think way too black and white when it comes to win-loss. They're way too binary in their mindset. Why we lost because of these reasons, we won because of these reasons. Win-loss is far more nuanced than that. There are things that buyers will like about you, and there are things that buyers won't like about you, regardless of the outcome. And you actually want to capture data that way so that you can step back and say, these things go well on wins, these things go poorly on losses, but also it's not just always on losses that this is a problem or always on wins that this goes well. You can actually sit there and think very, very clearly about what you need to do to win more when you capture both sides of decision drivers on each deal. The third point here is use those interviews that you would do to deep dive and uncover blind spots. So going back to this idea of the channels and opening up the channels, let me give you just a real world example. Let's say that I came into your organization to help you figure out why you were winning and losing. And one of the first things we did is we went and looked at your CRM data, and we found that you were losing disproportionately relative to your overall win rate in the travel and hospitality space. Wow, that's interesting. We're losing more in a specific industry. I wonder why that is. Then if you have it set up correctly, we can go to your CRM and see if there's things that your sales reps are providing in terms of feedback on travel and hospitality deals that are leading to a hypothesis of why that's happening. Perhaps the reps are telling you that you're lacking case studies or thought leadership in the space. Perhaps there's certain functionality that those companies require from your product that you just simply don't provide today. Perhaps there's a different competitor in that space. All of those are good things to know and be able to then go further test through in-depth buyer interviews, where you would go out and you would say, what is happening, and you'd very strategically target a set of interviews to happen with travel and hospitality wins and losses to figure out why they did or didn't choose you. So hopefully that's a good example for you of how you might use these channels in combination to get to the best answer. Fourth tip of the day, build an operational ongoing program. Companies are notorious for tiger teaming win and loss. I come out of the board meeting, I'm the head of sales. I was tasked with figuring out why we win and lose, or I'm the CMO. I was tasked with figuring out why we win and lose. I get 3 people from each of the major functions, and I tell them to go do a big teardown of our CRM and talk to our reps and maybe call a couple of buyers and come back and put together a PowerPoint deck and give it and read it out to the executive team next Friday. So we take down all these expensive resources. They go through this huge exercise. They create all these slides. They do this presentation, and guess what? The same thing happens 3 months later, 6 months later. And we're starting and stopping. There's no actual action that comes because we're spending a lot of time trying to figure out what's happening. This should be something that's built into your organization. It should be something that's flowing into your organization at all times. Successful win-loss programs are ongoing initiatives. This information is flowing into your organization. You're continuously collecting this feedback and you're pushing it out to the people that matter. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a tip here in a minute, but you're getting the information and you're pushing it out to people in the organization. Why does this matter? Well, the reasons why you win and lose are constantly evolving. And you need to be able to understand what's driving that. Is there a new competitor that's come in to a specific segment of the business? And did it take us 2 years to recognize that, or did we recognize that within 2 quarters? If you aren't taking the pulse of your pipeline and what's driving it to be positive and won or negative and loss in your organization, you're doing this wrong. Second point here is this is a long-term program, not a short-term fix. Doing that big PowerPoint presentation might make you feel good and you might get a gold star on the forehead, but guess what? It's not actually going to change the outcome. The way you change the outcome is to continuously have the pulse of what's happening and to have that information flowing directly into the hands of the stakeholders that matter. Third point here is you want to be able to monitor it over time. Markets change and evolve. And as markets change and evolve, you want to be able to see, are there certain things, hey, we revamped our UI and UX, and how's that actually helping us? Oh, wow, we've seen a big impact. Oh, wait, a new competitor's come in that has an even more modern workflow. And maybe we even need to do a second spin or second version on our UI to make it even that much better. So it needs to be something that just happens in your organization at all times. Now, this all can feel pretty overwhelming, okay? I get that. I totally get that. Most important thing is to just start. Choose a channel or choose a couple of deals to open up and go analyze and get that thing running and working for you. Starting small is better than never starting at all. I can't even tell you the number of companies that I've talked to where they're like, well, we've known we need to work on this for 6 months and we just keep, questioning how we're approaching it. It's more important to start and see what works and doesn't work than it is to get it perfect, because guess what? It will never be perfect. It should evolve. It should change over time. So if you got to start small, start small. Focus on a pocket or segment of your business, but just get started. One of our favorite clients, Sanjay Puri from Avalara, is a VP of product marketing at Avalara. Awesome, incredibly capable leader. When we asked him for his feedback as part of a webinar we were doing and his advice to companies who are trying to run programs like this, he said, just start the damn program. Doesn't matter how big you make it. Start with a few interviews, 2, 5, 10, 20 per month, whatever number makes sense for your business and budget. Sanjay's run a really effective win-loss program now for 3 years and has had a huge impact because of that mentality of let's just get going. And as we've worked with him and adapted the approach, we've been able to see even further impact be driven in the organization. So get going. Don't spend too much time over analyzing and over designing your program. Just move. Tip number 6 here is important. As you start to open up your CRM versus what your reps are saying versus what you're hearing from your buyers. You want to be able to integrate and interpret the results. So up till now, we focused on how do you collect the feedback. Now, how do you actually pull it together and drive action? So let's talk about this. Now I have information, and frankly, some of this information, my buyers and my reps may not say the same thing. So let's talk about what to do there. So first, you want to understand the decision drivers by channel. What does my sales team believe is driving me to win and lose deals? What do buyers tell me is driving me to win and lose deals? Really important. You want to collect those things distinctly. The second thing here is all great win-loss is about context. So match what you're hearing from reps and from buyers back to your CRM data so you can provide context around that deal. So if you've ever been a part of a win-loss initiative with an organization and you show up and you say, here's why we won or lost this deal, or you say, here's why we won and lost this set of deals, the very next question is, yeah, but how does that compare to the rest of our business? Yeah, but that's against this specific competitor. What does it look like against this other competitor? Being able to compile the data from your CRM and couple it with the feedback allows you to answer those questions, and frankly allows you to dispel or confirm the popular water cooler rumors in your organization. Well, we lose deals in this product segment because the buyers are just different. Well, actually, the buyers aren't different at all based off of what the requirements they're sharing with us in the win-loss interviews. And that's just an excuse that pocket of the sales team is losing to justify their underperformance. And conversely, actually, those buyers do have different requirements. They have security requirements that products that they purchase have to meet that we don't meet. So those reps are right, and we need to go address that if we expect them to win. Third point here, do not merge what the sales team says and the buyer says into a single data set. You want to keep those data sets separate, but be able to compare them. And this is really valuable. Sometimes people say, hey, we went out and we did a lot of win-loss, and it just confirmed a lot of stuff we thought we already knew. Well, what you want to do is you want to validate certain hypotheses through win-loss from what your sales team and buyers are telling you. You also want to be able to understand when things are different or distinct. So a couple of things. I might go out and I might interview 40 of your buyers and come back and tell you 3 or 4 things that I heard that are common themes across those 40 interviews. 3 of those 4 things that I tell you may be like, yeah, we knew that our product was missing certain capabilities around its API and ability to integrate with certain platforms. So that confirms one thing. Sure, we know that our pricing model doesn't really work for SMB businesses. Sure, we know that our sales team doesn't always demo really well. But I had no idea that our UI and our workflow was confusing to buyers and that we needed to change that. Well, don't discount the first 3 things that were confirmed, right? It actually helps you know and creates even further momentum that those are 3 things that need to go be addressed. And the 4th thing just added something else that needs to be addressed. So there's a lot of value in confirming what's happened or what you believe to be happening, as well as uncovering new things. The last thing I'll tell you on this point is when you think about the sales team and buyer feedback, that can also be really helpful when you think about this idea of confirming what you believe internally versus identifying new discoveries. If your sales team's telling you that your pricing model doesn't work and your buyer feedback, your buyer interviews also confirm that, then that's great. You have that much more confidence to go address your pricing model. But if your buyer feedback comes back and doesn't address that, and there's nothing really about the pricing model that's an issue with the buyers based off of those research initiatives, then you know you have a problem with your sales team and that there's an opportunity to better enable and train them. So There's real value in not just collecting from the channels, but bouncing the feedback from the channels off one another so you can figure out where you're aligned and where there's misalignment. Tip number 7, share these findings widely to drive action. The classic knowledge without action is futile statement. That's absolutely the case with win-loss. What's the point of gathering all this information, taking your sales team down, taking time of your buyers, spending money, time, effort, resources, if you're not actually going to do anything about it? So you want to drive meaningful action. Well, how do you drive meaningful action? The first way to drive meaningful action is to be transparent with the information. Push the information. Don't filter it. Don't hold it back. Don't be afraid that somebody's feelings are going to get hurt. If the product is missing functionality that's preventing people from buying, then the product team should know that, and they shouldn't wait for the QBR in 3 months to hear that. They should hear it right now, today, so they can go address it. If the sales team is messing up on their demos, or the way they quote pricing is completely a turnoff and a challenge for buyers, and buyers feel like they're dealing with the good old-fashioned quote unquote used car salesman, then they should know that right now. They shouldn't wait for somebody on the product marketing team to make a big PowerPoint presentation that gets presented in 3 months about it. Get this information to people so they can change and act and get better. Don't be an insights bottleneck. There's a temptation that I see with a lot of product marketing managers to want to hold this information tight to the chest, like they're playing poker with the organization. And it's almost like a political thing that is being done. They want to seem super valuable by knowing all of this, but actually the way you will drive value and the way you will become irreplaceable for your organization is actually by taking this information and getting it to the hands of people who can help you drive change and action in the org. Be collaborative, be excited, bring a lot of energy to it, and embrace transparency. Drive a culture of transparency. At the end of the day, if somebody gets mad because the feedback comes back that the sales rep did a bad job on the deal, well, guess what? That's what the buyer said, and that's what matters. So I would encourage you to totally embrace this principle. The second thing here is you want to make sure you get the relevant insights to the right functions and the right stakeholders in real time. How many of you have QBRs, quarterly business reviews, where you get together with the product team and the sales team and you pull together some quarterly win-loss report and you spend the time reading out everything that you've heard about the product, and the product team sits there and they actually feel kind of defensive, and they actually, you're giving them product level feedback, but it's kind of the first time they're hearing it, and they're hearing it in front of all their peers and the other functions, and you're kind of embarrassing them almost. How much more effective would that conversation be if throughout the quarter, as you get this feedback from buyers about things that need to improve on the product, you fed that to the product team in real time? If there's an issue with your pricing model, if the folks in charge of pricing heard that in real time and had access to that information. And by the way, I'm talking a lot about the things that need to be improved. What about the things that are going well? Give that to the product team. Hey, these new features have been game changing. Listen to how it helped us win this deal or that deal. As you feed this stuff in real time to people, when the time comes for that QBR, the nature of your conversation will change, and it will go from being a what is happening or why is it happening to what do we do? Because everyone will have access to the same information and have been able to digest it throughout the quarter, so that now you can focus on what we're going to go do about it. So share it widely. That's how you drive action, is you open up the curtains and let everybody see what's going on. Number 8, measure your success. So obviously any great program, you're tracking your success. The value of win-loss is tangible and measurable. What is happening to my win rate? How is it improving? So the way you can monitor the success of your program, there's a couple ways to do that, and I'll walk you through that here, but that actually can be one of the most rewarding parts of running one of these programs. So the first thing is watch your weaknesses turn into strengths. There is nothing more rewarding for us at Closed than to help a client see a challenge in their go-to-market, whether it's on the product or pricing or in the sales front, And then, 2 months later, as they've gone through and made changes to either the product or this through sales enablement, enabled the sales team better, trained them better, or tweaks to the pricing model, to hear the feedback from the buyers change. And it's awesome. It's one of our favorite things to see here is actually see the impact of listening to what the buyers are saying. You can measure the ROI of this, right? There's major success stories that you'll hear. Through win-loss, you'll find out things of why you won deals that you can then go apply to other deals. You'll hear why you lost, and you'll be able to identify that bear trap that you stepped in on that really important deal so you don't step in it on the next deal. One thing I'll tell you in terms of making sure you have success is you have to watch out for stagnation. What I mean by that is if you come back to me and tell me that you're hearing the same thing over and over through your win-loss interviews or through your win-loss data, then I'm going to tell you that you aren't driving enough action in the organization. If I've told, so for example, let's say I went and did 100 interviews for your organization, or you went and did 100 interviews for your organization last year, and the number one theme on your losses was that your UI looked outdated. It felt antiquated and not as modern as some of the other UIs that other companies had, and therefore the buyers feel like it's easier to adopt the other companies. That's the feedback we got last year. Well, here we are in 2020. If that's the feedback I'm still getting, then we haven't made the change. We need to go change it, or we need to do a better job of changing it. So when there's stagnation, that means that things aren't improving. Now, if that's a conscious choice, so be it, right? Every organization has to make trade-offs. But if the number one reasons why you're winning and losing, especially why you're losing, don't change over time, then that's cause for concern. So watch out for stagnation. You'll see success as you actually see your themes and your drivers change over time. The reasons why you're winning and losing change over time, because what that means is you're adapting to your market, because markets are living, breathing things that move and change. New entrants come in, old legacy players die off. So you need to have the pulse on it to understand what's happening. So I know I told you we'd give you 8 tips. I actually threw a bonus tip in here as I was preparing this because I want to make sure that everybody that listens to this understands what it takes to actually do this and do this successfully long term. Methodology and technology are the key to doing this at scale and repeatedly. So what do I mean by that? Methodology, what you ask, when you ask it, how you ask it matters. That will determine both the quality and quantity of feedback that you get. Way too many companies are recreating the wheel when it comes to win-loss. Every single company knows that they need to do this. Think about how many companies right now are trying to figure out what questions to put in Salesforce to ask their reps why they won and lost deals. It's happening everywhere, but there isn't great best practice for it. Don't recreate the wheel. Leverage people that have done this before that know how to do it. That's methodology. So many companies, they can't even get off the bench because they continually trip by asking the wrong questions over and over and approaching the sales. They think that they're doing great win-loss by asking the sales team, but they're not asking buyers, or they're only asking buyers and only doing interviews. Think really hard about your methodology and how you approach the problem. That's important. Second piece, maximize technology. If you're using technology to drive the collection, the reporting, and the sharing of the feedback, then you will get results. If you use technology, then you'll be able to scale and you'll be able to cover more pipeline. If you use technology, you'll be able to share the information out. I'm sorry, but if the way you're getting win-loss reports is through a PDF, then it's not going to work for your company long-term. If the information is being created and put on a PowerPoint slide, that's how this was done 15, 20 years ago. It's not how it's done today. So you need to make sure that you're leveraging technology to help drive this information, drive the collection of it, and drive the reporting and the sharing of it across your org. Do not be a bottleneck to the org. Be a conduit. That's what you want to be. Great win-loss feels like insightful information is flowing into your stakeholders seamlessly. So, and that's all I got for you today. So 8 tips plus a bonus is what you got. Thanks everybody for taking the time. Thank you so much, Product Marketing Alliance, for putting this together. They are a great partner of ours, and they add a lot of value to you. So I would encourage all of you to stay close to them. They do a great job bringing best practices to the hands and ears and eyes of product marketing managers all over the world. This is a new discipline, and it's an ever-changing discipline. It's kind of funny to talk to 2 different product marketing managers and see how different their jobs are. And I think Product Marketing Alliance does a great job of helping people understand what good looks like in this space. So appreciate that. In terms of what good looks like in win-loss, here's a couple of resources for you. You can go check out our win-loss guide. If you just hit this QR code with your phone, it'll take you to our website and you can download the guide. It has basically all the information we've gone over today, way more in depth with a lot more information and examples that you can use. Check out our blog. We have a lot there. Pragmatic Marketing. Gartner also has some information. And frankly, I love this stuff. I eat, sleep, breathe win-loss. So I'm always happy to be a resource to anybody. Feel free to reach out to me, Spencer@close.com. Always happy to talk shop and figure out how to help companies do better at this. And that goes for companies that are struggling. Happy to help you. But also, if you feel like you're doing innovative things, I'd love to hear from you. So thanks, everybody, for taking time today. Have a great rest of your day.